Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us on this webinar today to reintroduce our California Immigrant Data Portal. I'm Joanna Lee, Project Manager here at the USC Equity Research Institute. As you joined the webinar, you might have noticed that we asked you to answer a few questions to get to know who was on the call with us. I just want to share the results of this poll before we kick things off. Ooh, great. So we asked you all where you're tuning in from, and about 42% of you all are from Northern California, 51% from Southern California, 4% from Central California, and 4% from outside of California. So welcome. What sector do you work in? It looks like about 33% of you, a third of you are from community-based organizations, about a quarter from government, about 10, 11% from philanthropic organizations, about a fifth of you are from academic institutions, and 9% other. And have you used this data from the California Immigrant Data Portal? Wow, so about a third of you, 35%, just over a third, said yes, and about 55% said no, and some are not sure. So thank you all for taking that little survey with us. It looks like we have folks from across the state in many different sectors, and many of you have used our data portal tools. So thank you all for participating and for spending this next hour or so with us. And just a reminder, today's event hashtag is CA Immigrant Data Portal. If you are on social media during this webinar, please use that hashtag and tag us at ERI_USC on Twitter and Instagram. So before we dive in, I want to take a moment to recognize that California is home to Native nations on whose land we are living on, and acknowledge that we here at USC ERI are on Tongva land. We want to challenge the uplifting but inaccurate narrative that the state was built by immigrants. Instead, we want to acknowledge that the land we reside on was taken by a settler colonial society that exploited Native, immigrant, migrant, and enslaved people, stealing labor, knowledge, and skills to build what we now call California. As we recognize this history, we must also grapple with what it means to live on stolen land, understand our role and responsibilities as guests on Native American homelands, and be committed to supporting the struggle for Native nations' sovereignty and self-determination. So if you haven't already, please take a moment today to look up whose land you are on using native-land.ca. Now I'll turn it over to our director, Dr. Manuel Pastor.
Thank you, Joanna. Good to be with everyone this morning. I'm Manuel Pastor, and I'm director of the Equity Research Institute. Our consigno or slogan is data and analysis to power social change. And that pretty much says what we do. And that pretty much says why we support things like the California Immigrant Data Portal. We do work really in three different areas: economic inclusion and climate equity. Today, our big focus, immigrant inclusion and racial equity. We have always, and I will make comments about this later, understood the fact that we need to think about immigrant inclusion not as hopscotching over other groups on the way to mobility in the United States, but rather tackling the anti-Blackness and anti-indigeneity that was so thoughtlessly on display in a conversation by four of our Latino leaders here in Los Angeles in recent days, but has also helped to structure the kind of terrain of xenophobia that affects immigrants from Latin America, from Asia, from Africa as well, coming to the United States. Our third area of work is social movements and governing power, looking at how change takes place through community organizing. One of the reasons why we're so thrilled that so many of you are with us today. So what we're going to be doing today is to be talking about the California Immigrant Data Portal in this sort of bucket of work. And what we're going to try to do is to introduce, and look to about 55% of you, reintroduce to about 45% of you, the California Immigrant Data Portal, which is a place where you can get all sorts of data on immigrants in California in terms of ancestry, race, documentation status, location, and so much more. We're going to provide a demonstration of how to use the website and tell you a little bit about some recent updates to the tool and hopefully spark your interest in using the tool for change to promote immigrant inclusion and racial equity. Before Joanna takes you through the tool, I wanted to provide a little bit of context for the development of this tool. It's actually closely related to a project that we've been doing with PolicyLink for about a decade, the National Equity Atlas. The National Equity Atlas is a website which provides disaggregated data by race, nativity, gender, education, so many other variables for all 150 top 150 metropolitan areas in the United States, the top 100 cities in the United States, all 50 states, of course, DC, and now about 400 counties in the United States. Tremendous disaggregated data that racial equity advocates have been able to use to make the case for paying attention to racial equity in economic development planning and in constructing the futures of their metropolitan regions. But we began to realize that such a tool was absolutely essential around the question of immigrants as well. Now, this is partly because of the utility of the National Equity Atlas, but it's also because of how many of you came to us asking questions like how many English language learners are there in Los Angeles County? How many immigrants are indigenous and should be lifted up far more in the narrative than they often are? What about Black immigrants and the way in which they are sometimes erased in the story of the immigrant movement? And yet, for example, in LA County, 20% of Black Angelenos are either immigrant themselves or the sons and daughters, second generation of immigrants. So it's partly because you were bombarding us with so many questions that we decided to develop a tool where you can answer many of these questions yourself with the California Immigrant Data Portal. So this is something that took a village in terms of the tremendous work of our staff. Joanna, I'm sure, will talk about all the different people who played a role in both constructing the data, thinking about the communications, and a very important part of this website I really want to emphasize. It's called the California Immigrant Data Portal. And because it's got such cool data and charts, you may wind up thinking that is the only part of the website that you should pay attention to. But if you scroll beneath the data, you're going to consistently see stories about community-based organizations lifting up the concerns of immigrants. You're going to see about campaigns to improve immigrant lives. You're going to see good actions that have been taken by public agencies, often through the pressure of community-based organizations, making those sort of things happen. And you're going to see a lot of suggestions around effective policy to more fully incorporate immigrants and make sure that all of this is part of a broader movement for racial equity. So I hope that you were impressed by the bells and whistles of the data, but I hope that you dive deeply into the narrative and the stories and the policy suggestions, because they came really from so many of you in the interviews that were conducted. So it took a village to put together all of that data, and also took a village to fund this thing. So we'd like to thank our funders, the James Irvine Foundation, the California Wellness Foundation, the California Endowment, the Weingart Foundation, Open Society Foundations, and the Bank of America. Now, we'd like to, as I shift to Joanna to actually present the website, talk a little bit about our guiding principles for our work on immigrant inclusion and this website. There are three. First, we think that immigrant inclusion is everyone's business. There's a tendency to think that it's the role of immigrant rights groups, immigrant serving groups to lift up these concerns. But if you think about the future of the state of California, it's immigrants and the children of immigrants that will be so crucial to that future. So everyone needs to be concerned about successful immigrant inclusion. Second, there is no successful immigrant inclusion unless we tackle anti-Black racism, unless we tackle anti-indigeneity, unless we tackle colorism that comes so often within our immigrant communities and is reinforced by the racism of the United States. This has been a central guiding principle of our work for the last decade. It's more relevant now than ever. We have seen that when people try to say that they're going to improve Latino political power, but the way that they're thinking about it is reducing the power of others, is that in fact, what happens is that you reduce Latino political effectiveness and voice. And it is the same thing with the immigrant rights movement more generally. Yes, we need to lift up immigrant rights and the task of immigrant inclusion, but we don't want to integrate into a society that is not working for so many. We don't want to be included in a society riddled with racism. Immigrant inclusion is not just about immigrants doing better. It's about transforming the terrain of the society of which we are a part. Our final principle is that California must lead on immigrant inclusion and provide a model for the rest of the state. So I've talked a lot about the context and the moment that we're in. It's a difficult moment for our city, but it's a clarifying moment in terms of the need to tackle racism, to tackle homophobia. And we know that a website like this can't address all of those issues. But we know that a website like this can provide cool data and cool stories to you as you begin to weave the struggle for immigrant rights into the struggle more broadly for racial equity, for social justice, for saving our planet. With that, let me turn things over to our project lead on this, Joanna Lee.
Thank you so much, Benoit. Hi again. My main job today is to take you through the data portal website. I'm going to do a brief demonstration of the site and share the new data and features we've added since we first launched the site in 2020. First, I'm going to take a minute to recognize the team behind it all. Most of us are actually immigrants or part of immigrant families. We all hail from different parts of the state as well. Doing this work is personal to our whole team, and we're really proud to be a part of this project. So thanks, team, for putting so much care and hard work into building out the site. And I also want to acknowledge that members of our team are here with us on this webinar, answering questions and sending out messages in the chat. So feel free to say hello to them. I also want to thank the many folks who helped advise us on this website when we launched in 2020, as well as folks who have provided feedback along the way. I know many of you are joining us today. Thank you to those working in community-based organizations, our affiliate researchers and research partners, foundations, our advisory board, and the many others who took the time to share with us your experience with data and what you would like to see on the site. Your advice and guidance has informed the entire website, especially the narrative pieces. Since there are both folks who are new to the site and those who have already accessed data before, I'd just like to quickly provide a brief reintroduction to the site, then dive into highlighting the features of our indicator pages, including navigating through the charts and other great content we've developed to help them build a fuller story beyond the numbers. So the California Immigrant Data Portal features data on immigrant communities throughout the state. The site is meant to be a resource and progress tracker for immigrants and those serving immigrant communities. Our site features 20 data indicators organized into 4 categories. The first category, demographics, provides general information on immigrants statewide. The last 3 categories are based on our 3-part definition of immigrant inclusion. Economic mobility indicators capture the economic realities of immigrants statewide. Warmth of welcome indicators measure the degree to which local communities support immigrants and include immigrants in daily life. and civic participation indicators give an outlook on the opportunities that immigrants have to shape civic and political life in their communities. On each indicator page, as Manuel mentioned, we include not only interactive charts and graphs, but also additional content to help frame the indicator topic and links to reports and other resources. We include vignettes and profiles of the critical immigrant inclusion and immigrant rights work being done statewide. Here is the list of the 20 indicators currently on our site. Data on the site are comparable over time, and you can access data from multiple levels of geography. The portal includes data for all 58 counties, 110 sub-county areas, or for you data nerds, CPUMAs, consistent public use microdata areas, 33 large California cities, and one census designated place. And in case you're interested, that is East LA. Due to sample size, data may not be available for all geographies and all indicators. For example, some indicators may not have data for sub-county geographies and only have statewide and county data. To the extent possible, data are also disaggregated by race, ancestry, and nativity. Most of the data on the site are ERI's analysis of public data sets, such as the US Census's American Community Survey, IPUMS, and summary file data, California Department of Education, and many others. Some data are from vendors such as GuideStar and Political Data Inc. Data on the undocumented and eligible to naturalized populations are estimates that ERI developed based on a statistical model using the 2014 Survey of Income and Program Participation that was then applied to ACS microdata. So folks who have used our site in the past might be wondering what's new since we first launched the site in 2020. There's a lot of new content. We have a new map feature on many of our indicator pages. We have also updated data and 2 new indicators, digital divide and languages spoken. We have a new tour feature to help folks navigate through the indicator charts. And we've updated all of our narrative content as well. Before we dive into the data tool on the site, I'd just like to start at the front page, particularly for folks who might be new to the site. Right. So we have a lot of content on the front page. The front page helps users understand our approach to this data portal and how our data indicator pages are organized. We also discuss our guiding principles, which Manuel shared with you earlier. From the front page, folks can access the main portions of the website using these square images. After this, we use this portion of the site to bring together immigrant and Native and Indigenous communities around a shared analysis with a link to an additional page with more resources we've gathered, thanks to Native and Indigenous community leaders and organizations. Our data highlights section provides some content for the moment and a link to a dedicated page highlighting data on the pandemic. That includes data on essential workers and resources to provide insight on how California's immigrant communities were and still are impacted by this global crisis. We also feature a sampling of indicators on this part of the front page as well. We include a short narrative piece on the front page that is also featured on an indicator page to highlight key issues facing immigrant communities. This profile, which you can also find on our recency of arrival indicator page, highlights how Title 42 has been used to deny Black refugees and asylum seekers entry to the US, and how Black immigrant serving organizations such as the Black Alliance for Just Immigration continue to organize and advocate for change against a system that perpetuates violence and discrimination against Black immigrant communities. We feature many more pieces like this one, and I recommend looking for these yellow boxes throughout the site. Many of these pieces have powerful examples of the important work being done in our communities. All right, so that's our front page. Next, let's head to the data summaries page, which provides a sampling of our data indicators and allows you to pull data for your particular area. So if you scroll to the top of the website, just like I did, you'll see the data summaries, the top right-hand corner, and you can just click this to access this page. This page is a great way to access data for a specific community. You can do here is you can select your desired geography at the top of the page. Let's check out the data summary for Alameda County, for example. So I just changed the geography type to county and then selected Alameda County. The data summary here provides us the story of immigrants in one area in 10 pre-selected charts. It provides a cross-section of indicators from each of the 4 data categories all in one place. These are the indicators you will see on the summary page. This data summary tool is great to begin to learn more about the social and economic dynamics of immigrant communities in your area. But in the interest of time, we'll move on to the main part of the data portal, which are the indicator pages. All right, let's head to the indicator landing page. I'm going to click at indicators at the top here, the menu. Indicator page is where users can access all 20 of our indicators on one page organized into our 4 sections: demographics, economic mobility, warmth of welcome, and civic participation. We won't have time to discuss all of the indicators today, but I will walk you through a few so I can show you some of the features on each page. You can also go straight to a specific indicator you're interested in by navigating your mouse over the top, over the word indicator at the top to expand the menu. A black box will appear and you can just click on the name of the indicator you would like to view. I'll use this box to go quickly to one of our demographic indicators, mixed status families. I'd like to use this opportunity to show you our new tour feature, which we've implemented on each indicator. If you scroll to the bottom of each chart, you will see an extra tab after the what it shows and why it matters tabs that say tour. So you'll click on that tour button, and it takes you through a quick orientation of the chart and some of its key features. I'll show you how it works now. So once I click on the tour button, it'll send you up to select a geography. You can select the type of geography you want to display in the chart here. We have, for example, California statewide data, county, sub-county area, large city. Once you select the data, you can click next. And you can select the specific community using this drop-down menu. I'll click on next. Then the tour button brings you to a little question mark symbol, which if you click on it, provides a definition of the indicator and links to the methodology and data sources page. Next up, you can head to the Select Breakdown tab, which expands to show you all of the different charts and graphs available for this indicator. We have breakdowns by immigration status, by race, ancestry, and more. I also want to note that in some cases, some indicator breakdowns will have an option for filters at the top of the chart, which will help you look at different displays of the data. Click next. If you want to take this chart or graph and put it into a PowerPoint presentation or a report, you can actually download the data as a JPEG, PowerPoint slide deck, or an Excel table. I'll show you how this is done later. I'm pretty sure it's some of the team's favorite feature on the site. Data is also shareable. This button allows you to post this chart to social media or to send it to someone via email. Right, heading down below the chart itself, you can click on the What It Shows tab, which highlights one key takeaway from the chart. The Why It Matters tab helps provide some context about why this data point is important in advancing equity for immigrants and others throughout the state. Right, the tool has a lot of components, so we hope this Tour tab can help folks better understand how to navigate this interactive chart feature. While we're here, I'd like to make sure to note that many of our indicators have a by ancestry breakdown. In the by ancestry breakdown, you can access disaggregated data for specific immigrant groups, sometimes filtered into racial groups. We have data available for about 50 ancestry groups statewide. While these interactive charts might be the main reason you stop by these pages, I would recommend not to stop here and to continue to scroll down. Below the chart, we offer framing and examples that help provide more context for the data. For example, in our Insights and Analyses section, we've added additional data for more context, or to include communities and issues that might not be fully represented in the data above. For this indicator, we include information on the public charge rule, as well as research showing the impact of deportation and family separation on immigrant families. Below these Insights and Analyses are 1 to 2 yellow boxes with narrative pieces. These pieces include expanded discussions on key issues facing immigrant communities, profiles on leaders, and organizations doing essential work to support immigrants, and more. Here we have a piece on DACA and another piece highlighting Indigenous migrant youth living on the Central Coast. And if you want to explore data on the site, we've added links to related indicators at the bottom of each page. Just click on the rectangular indicator cards here. Okay, now let's take a look at one of the site's 2 new indicators, digital divide. Go to this indicator box, click on digital divide right here. This indicator measures the number and proportion of households in a specific geography that lack access to a high-speed internet connection or a computer. Data are available in 5 breakdowns or charts for this particular indicator. Here, I will click on the Select Breakdown button to show the drop-down menu, which allows us to select one of the charts available for digital divide. Our indicators have multiple options for visually breaking down the data in the breakdown section here. You will see that we have data by race, which is the default chart that you see first, then charts for status, youth, a ranking chart, and a map. I'll click quickly through them so you can see, stopping at the ranking and map charts to show you how they work. The first breakdown shows the percent of households that lack digital access by both race and nativity. The yellow bars are immigrant and the red bars are US born for each of the 7 racial groups and total population where applicable. This bar chart shows that many communities struggle with a lack of digital access, with Latino immigrant and Native American communities impacted the most. The second breakdown by status shows data for immigrants as a whole, as well as immigrants who are undocumented, lawful residents, naturalized US citizens, as well as US born and the total population for comparison. This chart shows that undocumented immigrants are most likely to lack access to a computer or high-speed internet at home. The third breakdown shows lack of access for digital access for youth by their racial group and nativity. This chart shows the percentage of those in grades K through 12 who lack digital access. And as you can see, Latinx youth were the most likely to lack digital access at home. The fourth breakdown is a ranking chart. You can use this to compare lack of digital access among different counties, sub-counties, regions, or sub-county regions or cities. To use this breakdown, you'll need to select the geographic type, and in this case, I'll select county, and then the specific geography you want to look at, and the rank chart will appear. For example, I want to select a county, and then I'll select, for example, Tulare County. The rank chart will appear, showing me that among the 33 counties for which data are available, Tulare has the largest percentage of immigrant households that lack access to a computer or high-speed internet. There. The last breakdown is one of our new features on the site, a map. We have maps available for 16 of our indicators. Data are available for select geographies. And what I'll do is I'll click on sub-counties, for example, and you can filter the data down to look at the maps by specific characteristics. For example, in this case, by status and by race. I'd like to also show you how to compare geographies as well. So let's head up to the naturalization indicator. Here. So in these charts, you can compare 2 geographies using the Select Compare feature located above the chart. To use this feature, I'll first select the geographic type. So I click on Select. I'll use county again. Then I will select, for example, San Diego County. Let's see. The box to the right. So then I will click the Compare button and select the second geography of the same type, county. Once again, I'll select its neighbor, Orange County. The gray bars represent data for San Diego, and the orange bars are for Orange County. So to clear this comparison and go back to statewide data, for example, I'll click the X next to compare and then select the geographic type, state, in California. All right. So now I'm going to finish up this demonstration by showing you how to download the data into a PowerPoint presentation using the small arrow button next to the filter options. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the cool features of the site is the ability to download data into PowerPoint presentations, tables, and graphics for your own work. Simply click on the download link here, and you can select one of the 3 types of formats to download: JPEG, PowerPoint, and Excel. For the sake of time, I've already preloaded the PowerPoint for this breakdown to show you. So for example, with the PowerPoint feature, it comes in a 5-page slide deck. We hope this feature makes it easy for folks to access data and incorporate it into your work. Back. Feature. Also, just to note, there is a button next to the download feature that allows you to share this indicator on social media or email. And the icon next to that one allows you to view the page in full screen mode. I hope this demonstration provides a good sense of the type of data and content we have on the data portal. Our team will be continuing to update the site and also highlight other features and data that I didn't cover in future videos, webinars, and social media pieces. I would encourage you to join our email list so we can let you know when we add new features and host events related to the data portal. There's an orange pop-up box at the bottom right side of the website where you can sign up to get updates. So thank you for following along. I'm really excited about this update to the data portal, and I encourage you to take some time to check out the site on your own. Now I'll turn it back over to Manuel.
Thank you, Joanna. I think I'm going to echo what's in the chat, which is this is pretty amazing. And you're right. I'm one of the people who was the most excited about the download feature. And it's made my job of presenting around the state and the country so much easier to just be able to download a chart, paste it in, get ready to go. We know that people have actually also used the data at times to make presentations to county agencies to try to focus attention. They've used the data to highlight the disaggregated nature of the Asian American immigrant experience so that the sort of making everyone into a monolithic group doesn't obscure the real differences that exist there. I think it's just been tremendous. And I know I've had a good time being able to use what you and the team have created and often kindly given me some credit for, although mostly I was rah, go team, more data. So I'd actually like at this point to introduce our friend Sasha from the California Immigrant Policy Center to talk a little bit about how Sasha Feldstein has used the data in her own work. I was actually quite pleased to see you using it a bunch regularly, and then you just did a recent report, and it just brought a little beautiful tear to my eye about how many charts seem to come directly from this website. So, Sasha, can you talk a little bit about how you've used it? You could talk a little bit too about gaps and how we've tried to address those. And I think we've also sometimes worked to provide custom data to people like you and others. If you could just tell us a little bit about your own interactions with the California Immigrant Data Portal.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Manuel. Thanks to everyone for having me. And yeah, huge thank you to the Equity Research Institute for this data portal that has been so helpful to me and I know my whole team at California Immigrant Policy Center. So for those who don't know us, we are a statewide policy advocacy organization, and we use the information in this portal all the time in terms of whether it's supporting bills, using the data to talk about, analyze and really talk about why we support certain issues. We use it to educate legislators to help them understand how these issues manifest in their districts, in counties, and across the state. We use it in our messaging because we work with our partners all the time who give us their stories, right? Their anecdotal data, which is just as important. The qualitative data is just as important as the quantitative, but you really need both. And so the data really helps us tell richer stories and helps people know that they're not alone, that the things that they're experiencing at home in their families and their gut is actually something you can see in the numbers too. And so it's been really, really powerful for us. I'll just use one example. At CIPC, we work on a campaign called the Safety Net for All campaign as part of the Safety Net for All coalition. This coalition was formed at the beginning of COVID because we knew that people who are undocumented and excluded from federal benefits, COVID relief, were going to be the most adversely impacted by the pandemic, and that the inequities that we've seen exacerbated over the past 3 years, we actually couldn't predict that happening if you look at the data, right? The data in the portal talks about how the vast majority of people who are undocumented work in agriculture, construction, manufacturing, all essential services during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we also knew from the data that people who are undocumented earn on average half of what their US citizen counterparts earned. And so we knew from the lived experiences of our communities and partners and from the data in the portal that exclusions from the safety net were going to disproportionately harm our communities, given the precarious conditions that they were already living in and the systemic inequities they were already facing. And so we use this as kind of, core data points in our campaigns, not to mention research reports. The report that Professor Pastor is mentioning is a funder report where we're actually making the case to funders about why it's so important to really take more action in supporting anti-Black racism, particularly in the immigrant community, and the systemic inequities that impact the economic security of people who are undocumented. So that report's going to be coming out in a few weeks, and it's full of data from the portal. So it helps us in our publications, it helps us in our advocacy efforts, and it really helps us tell stories better too.
Great. Thank you very much, Sasha. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, would you mind sharing what part of the data portal you think is most important for people to pay attention to? I'll just say one thing before you go. I really want to say once again that it's easy, particularly when you can look at a graph and it's as beautiful as these graphs are, although they sometimes tell a horrible story in terms of the xenophobia, structural racism, discrimination that keep immigrants behind. But because the data is so powerful quantitatively, because the graphs are so powerful, because you can download them in a PowerPoint, you might forget to drift down and look at all of the extra data points that we draw from other studies that don't come from the national level data that we're using, or all of these great stories of political organizing for immigrant rights and movements by local agencies that are really making a difference. So I think one thing I really urge people to take a look at is to go below the chart and understand the story. If you were giving advice to a new user, now that you're a complete veterana, what's the advice you would give in terms of making sure that people tap into something that's powerful?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you said. The insights and analyses below the graphs are really helpful for just making sense of the data, as well as the tab that says why it matters under the chart. So you can really say, okay, I'm looking at this graph. What's it really telling me? What's the story it's really trying to tell? And then I really appreciate that you include the case studies and testimonials and things like that, even below the insights and analyses, because that's where you're able to see the numbers really come to life, how they relate to issues on the ground and people's stories of organizing, as you said. So yes, 100% look below the charts, read all the things below. I think it makes the data a lot richer. The other thing I just want to throw out there is this team. Like there have been so many times when I've looked at the graphs or the data and I've had certain questions, or maybe I think there's something missing. And this team is so knowledgeable and so responsive. I think it's really helpful. There's a lot of data sets out there and a lot of other data portals out there. But the fact that, we're here on this webinar now and everyone here is getting to meet the people behind, some of the people, there's a whole other team too that you're not seeing their faces, but I still think it's such a valuable asset that I know I have people I can email and contact and who can help answer my questions, make sense of things, and also improve the portal. I've gotten to really see that firsthand, the evolution of when you first launched the portal till now, how it's evolved and how it's improved. So definitely just, in terms of look at the charts, look at the insights analyses, read the stories, really take your time with it. And then don't be afraid to contact the team if you have questions.
Great. I'm going to pull up some of the questions that have come up, but Joanne, I wanted to ask you, what's the thing you're the proudest of or thing is the coolest, particularly in this update?
It's hard. It's like, like your favorite children, I think. So it's hard to pick one. I think I really, I really gravitate towards the whole package. I'm so proud of the way in which we've been able to not only add additional data points like digital divide and language spoken. I'm actually proud of, I'm going to say disaggregation. I'm really proud of the level of disaggregation. I think the language spoken is one of the indicators. I'm proud of too, that we're able to provide a level of detail and hopefully more visibility to many more groups. And that's one thing that we continue to want to improve upon in our site, is to create more visibility too. So I'm really proud of the disaggregation, although I'm proud of everything, but that's the thing that I'm really proud of.
That was a very good answer for a mother.
That's right.
I'll try to echo that as a dad. So I wanted to lift up a couple of things that have come up. There was a question about, can you disaggregate Black immigrants by the countries that they came from? The answer to that is yes. And one thing to realize is that there are certain levels of geography at which the disaggregation is not available. So for example, if you're in a part of the state that doesn't have a lot of Black immigrants, then we don't think that the disaggregation is reliable. But if you look at San Diego, or if you look at Los Angeles, or if you look at parts of the Bay Area where there are more sizable numbers of Black immigrants, that kind of disaggregation is available. And very similarly, a question came up about race and ancestry. We are trying to pay a lot of attention, of course, to the questions of race, because what we understand is that the immigrant experience is a racialized experience. And if you stand back and think about who immigrants were 35 years ago, and the way in which the United States thought, wow, immigrants must be more than 35 years ago, 50 years ago, immigrants, that's part of the story of America. But as soon as immigrants became far more from Latin America, Asia, and then recently more from Africa, you're beginning to see the racialization, which is one of the reasons why we think that lifting up anti-Black racism is so key to understanding the contemporary struggle for immigrant rights. So yes, there's a lot on race. And often when you're looking at second generation, like the kids stuff on digital divide, race is really, really important because so many of those kids are US born. But we often also look at ancestry. There was another question that came up, and that question was about the naturalization maps that we've provided in the past. Those are still available on our website. Those are nationwide. This is a far more detailed tool with many more data points. And again, the website is immigrantdataca.org, immigrantdataca.org. There may be one or two more questions, but I thought we'd see whether or not we can simply thank Sasha and allow her to turn off her camera, just in case below that very nicely dressed top, there are, for example, sweatsuits or something like that, which would be very much the character here for a Zoom setting. And one of the things I'm really happy about with this Zoom that's gone so far is that there was actually a earthquake drill here, and I managed to get my comments done about 5 seconds before the earthquake drill rang out and I had to dive beneath my desk. So I want to turn things over to Joanna to see if there's any other questions that you want to be able to lift up or address.
Well, I'd just like to share with folks that this is an iterative process, and we're going to continue to improve the data portal and release more data and more features. We had a long discussions in our team. A lot of folks filled out a survey that we sent out earlier this year, asking folks what you might want to see on the data portal. We're still taking those into consideration. We're hoping to provide, for example, more age breakdowns, more gender cuts as well. So I think we just want to continue improving upon it. Any feedback that folks have on the data portal will be, much appreciated. But just want to thank everybody for kind of sticking with us and continuing to access our data and reaching out to us.
Great. I'm seeing a couple of comments in the chat about perhaps doing more gender breakdowns going forward. There was also a good thing that we might consider about household size. there's been a few questions that have come up about the level of geographic detail, and maybe you can talk a little bit about why we chose the geographies we did and why there are some limits. For example, the website doesn't have track level data, which is something that we do have at the National Equity Atlas on some indicators.
Right. I mean, a lot of this data is for immigrant populations, right? Or estimates based on the immigrant population, and to cut it down to that size would, you know, has a lot to do with the reliability of the estimates, right? And so we kept that kind of a larger geographic size. So a lot of the data here will be at the Puma level, the city level, large city level, but not quite as detailed, as granular for like privacy reasons and concerns around that as well, and sort of stability of the data.
Yeah, and I think part of that is that one thing that is unique about this data is that it, from the get-go, has estimates on the undocumented. And they're fairly reliable. There's been a lot of calibration done over the years to make them fairly reliable, particularly for the state of California and its unique populations, such as really making sure that our estimates of the undocumented for Asian populations are better than many of the estimates nationwide, because of course the Asian origin population is important everywhere, but it's particularly important in the state of California. One of the things which I think is really crucial to highlight about that is that because we've got fairly good estimates of the undocumented, we've got pretty good estimates of who is eligible to naturalize. A lot of the attention that gets paid to whether or not people naturalize looks at all immigrants, but not all immigrants are eligible, because you need to be lawfully present to be able to be here. And one of the things that we do at some parts on the website, and certainly in our analysis, is net out the TPS holders, the DACA holders, et cetera, and also net out the students and H-1B visa holders, so that you're getting much tighter estimates of who is eligible to naturalize, because they're actually a legal permanent resident, rather than someone who might be here on a student visa or an H-1B visa. So I think we're almost at the end, and we always left end just a little bit early so that people still like us and want to come back. So Joanna, any last words? And then I'll say a few last words.
I just want to thank everybody for participating today, asking such good questions, diving into the data. I've seen some folks be really energized about using this portal. So thank you all for joining us today.
And I want to thank that team that you had a chance to see a picture of. It's large, it's diverse, it's committed, and it's aware that our brand is about rigor and accuracy. So making sure that we have data and analysis to power social change. And I just want to end with our big themes. Immigrant inclusion is everyone's business. We hope that people in the immigrant rights arena, people in immigrant serving organizations, people in county governments concerned about immigrants use this data. But we hope that philanthropy sees how important the immigrant community is to all aspects of social justice in California, that our business partners think about how crucial this data is. And we also want to make sure that everyone gets this message that immigrant inclusion is everyone's business. We also think it's critically important. Our second message is that there is no immigrant inclusion without racial equity. If we do not tackle the terrain of structural racism that affects Black Americans, Indigenous people in the United States, Indigenous migrants, Black migrants, if we do not tackle that and transform the systems of inequality, what are we asking immigrants to be included into? The struggle for immigrant inclusion is a struggle for social justice and transformation. And in this struggle, California must lead. We are the state that saw 50% of the immigrants coming into the nation in the 1970s and 1980s settle here. We are the state that had the battles around Prop 187 and the height of xenophobia in that era, which was, as you will recall, very much wrapped up in a set of other racist propositions that were not just about the fiscal strains that immigrants might introduce, but about fears of the political power of people of color, particularly if they come together. So we know that we are in a critical moment and that California must continue to lead. We've made tremendous progress in terms of all sorts of things, driver's license, support for undocumented students, health insurance, etc. But there's so much more to do in terms of achieving full equity. So we want to thank all of you for being with us on this journey. We hope that this data and stories will be an important part of the toolkit that you use to fight for full inclusion. And I want to conclude with a special thanks to my colleague Joanna Lee for leading this team and creating such a powerful website and for putting together such a powerful webinar that actually also, damn it, ended on time, helping us keep our reputation. Gracias, adios, suerte, bye-bye.